Since we're all new here, let me bring you up to speed real quick. This is a 31 Ford Model A. This is a pile of Z06 Corvette parts. This is a Honda K24. My name's Nate. And this is the M word. Okay, so while we struggle with flat tires and soft sand and no ramps, I figure we just take a few minutes and kind of get to know each other, get acquainted as it were, you know, before we get ourselves into too much trouble. I'm sure this will sound real familiar to a lot of you. I've invested a significant portion of my time and energy into building stuff for other people, while my own stuff kind of sits and gets the short end of kind of all of the collective sticks. And I always felt, just like every other very smart boy, that if I just had the chance, I could build something really cool. But talk is cheap, and if it were easy, everybody would do it. So, put up or shut up time, I guess, where I take my little bit of money and put it where my really big mouth is, and we're all going to find out together if I'm as clever as I think I am. Okay, the car is inside. Now what? So this is a 1931 Ford Model A, assembled right here in these United States.
That's right, this sweet baby was made in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
That's pretty close. This sweet baby was actually assembled in Dearborn at the Ford Rouge River Assembly Plant.
Groovy.
It is groovy. You know what else is groovy? Ford had their own film crew at the time, so there's all sorts of B-roll that exists of Model A's being put together from the late 20s and early 30s. So I'm going to chuck that up here on the side and just let it run while we talk about how cool this car is. And I do want to take a few minutes to talk about how nice this car actually is, because despite its kind of rustic outward appearance, it's actually really solid and surprisingly not screwed with, especially when you consider the silly thing's nearly 100 years old. It does have a rumble seat. I'm not sure if that makes it a deluxe coupe instead of a standard coupe, and I really don't care. It does have a 1964 New Mexico license plate on it, which will tell us that, at the very least, it was registered in 1964. If we'd like to put on our detective glasses and dive just a little bit deeper,
I am going to get to the truth.
We can surmise that sometime in the year of 1964, something impacted the rear panel of this car and did this not insignificant amount of damage. And that's huge. That panel right there is multiple layers of very thick steel. I'm going to assume that sometime after that, the car got pulled off the road to be fixed, that wheel got sold at some point, and someone started sanding all these flat panels, uncovering some very cool pre-1964 lead bodywork. So there's some here on that passenger side door, and there's a little bit on the quarter panel over here on the driver's side near the deck lid. So that would have predated all this panel sanding, so I'm going to do my best to keep that because I think that's really interesting, and that's kind of old car history stuff that I really enjoy. So we'll be leaving that lid right where it is. Those handles still handle. And the doors, no, they still door. Under the hood, we've got the 3.3 liter four-cylinder this car left the factory with. That's 201.5 cubic inches to those of us who only measure stuff in cheeseburgers. Spark plug wires made of actual wire. A hole for the original heater that looks like it was cut with a torch. And a really, really fancy aftermarket fuel system.
Spared no expense.
It's still got the two-blade hand remover, and I'm pretty sure that's a vintage original hose clamp. One of my favorite strange details of this car is the coil cutoff switch key thing. I'm assuming that's some sort of fancy anti-theft device, because this is New Mexico after all, and sometimes the line between your stuff and my stuff gets a little bit blurry. I almost forgot about the updraft carburetor, which seems to only exist to mock the laws of gravity and nature and all that is good and right in the world. This combination of 1931 technology yielded a stunning 40 horsepower at an absolutely screaming 2200 RPM. All of that wrapped up in a package that weighed a little over 400 pounds. Fun fact, probably, I think the Model A was the first car to have a laminate safety glass windshield. So if that ever comes up on Final Jeopardy, just remember where you heard it. The fun continues in the interior. All sorts of stuff to pull on and wiggle. You see how fun that was? People who have Model A's love to trot out these little facts like, oh, Henry Ford used to make all of his suppliers send parts in certain size crates, and then he'd have the crates taken apart and use them to make floors in the car. If that actually happened, you're looking at one of those upcycled crates right there. See? And you guys thought YouTubers invented pallet furniture. And since I can't get enough of talking about wood, the original wood kit in this car is actually in really good shape. The top and the stringers up there are pretty much toast, but this bit here that was just a little bit sheltered still has all the original nails from the original upholstery in it. And on some parts down here you can see it's even still got original varnish or paint or whatever kind of finish they used. All the nuts and bolts and hardware in it still existing as it was in 1931 when it was installed by a man with a funny hat and stripy overalls. One of the few places there's any rot at all in this car is right here under this back window where the nails let some water kind of penetrate down into the wood and rot it from the inside out there. I'd really like to repair that. I've got the original seat frame that's got a bunch of really perfect hardwood of whatever type that is. I'm pretty sure this was oak or ash or maple. I'm an oak man myself. That's what I have in my bedroom.
How about you, Jimmy? You an oak man?
Oak's nice.
There's a bit more rot up here on the passenger side in the corner near the roof, and I'm going to go ahead and try to repair that. I'm invested in trying to keep the wood in this car. The wood's 94 years old. So many opportunities for it to be taken out or ruined or whatever, and it hasn't been. And I'll be damned if I'm going to be the guy that's going to wreck it after all this time. Another part of the random restoration or upgrade process is there's a bunch of modern connectors kind of everywhere, as if maybe someone was thinking about a 12-volt upgrade at some point. This headlight is of course untouched. It kind of sucks that someone sanded all the paint off these flat panels, because if you look, there's some remnants of some very old pinstriping on there. I know they striped these cars from the factory, and this doesn't look like factory striping. This looks like some authentic farm pinstriping work there, but still pretty old and kind of cool, and you wonder how many years that stuff's been sitting there. And we're almost done with our detective glasses. But I just wanted to show you guys real quick these interior supports where the body bolts to the frame. These just must have been annihilated when that rear end got hit, because it looks to me like someone took a torch and a chisel and started cutting these out, probably intending to replace them. Actually, the way this looks is those were probably holding the body all stretched out on both sides, but someone got to this point and decided that this was just maybe too much work or not fun enough or whatever else, and this is where it's set, and this is where it's been in this condition for 60 years. And I think it's incredible in that amount of time no one's ruined it or anything else, and I don't know. I wanted to document that and just have a chance to show you guys what it looked like before we start messing with it, because we're going to change it a lot. And I think it's cool that it survived to this state, and I just want to kind of keep that in mind as we go forward. Okay, finally, what are we actually going to make? I was going to do this whole thing about West Coast and East Coast and the kind of styles you'd see on both sides and why, and spoiler, it's got to do with rain on one side and dry lakes on the other. But when you start quoting that 25th letter of the alphabet, why? Why are you doing it this way? That slope gets real slippery real quick. Like, why the K-motor? Why all the Z06 stuff? Why aren't you chopping it? Torque tube? Why are you like this? And these are good questions, and they deserve answers. And if you guys want, I'll answer each and every single one of them. Short story, it's a lot this guy's fault, but we don't have time to really dive into all the nuts and bolts and the who's and the how's and the why's and the when's right now, because we've already been talking for 11 minutes, and I can't imagine...
Get on with it!
No, you're absolutely right. Let's get down to the business part of it. I have wasted enough time already. So, without further ado, we are going to make this. Turns out, the wheelbase of a C5 Corvette and the wheelbase of this Model A coupe are within 1 inch of each other. So we're going to take those C5 cradles and stick them together with a whole bunch of 1 5/8 chromoly tubing and sort of stuff this Model A body down on top of the whole thing. We're going to put our rear-wheel drive converted K24 into the shortened Corvette torque tube and right into the 6-speed transaxle out of that Z06. I want stuff. I have a list of wants for this project that I'm going to be kind of a stickler about. I really want 500 horsepower. I want to keep that real low 5 or 6 inch C5 ride height. I really want a flat hood, and I want to keep this whole mess right around 2,000 pounds. I'm trying to be very careful to stay away from making a race car. Race car, in my experience, becomes this kind of all-consuming thing that needs its whole dedicated support network to keep it going, and it's a real pain sometimes, and your mileage may vary, but in my experience, race car oftentimes ends up pushed over in the corner of the shop, not being driven. And I really want to drive it. So, it should be enough like a Corvette that track days and stuff like that will not be out of the question, but a dedicated race car, it is not. So, if that's what you were hoping for, I'm sorry to disappoint, but get used to it, because it'll happen again and again and again. A lot of firsts for me on this project. This is my first Model A, definitely my first Honda motor, my first time screwing around with anything C5 Corvette related. It's my first tube chassis, and this will definitely be my first foray into aftermarket electronic fuel injection. So, lots of stuff to learn, lots of stuff to figure out. It's going to be emotional, but I'm really excited about it. As a matter of fact, I'm so excited about this car I'm having a hard time putting it into words. But I am reminded of a quote by one of our generation's most celebrated environmentalists. I believe it was the nature boy, Ric Flair, who put it best when he said, "Woo." And that's all I've got for this one. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for watching. If you feel so inclined to do the things, I'd appreciate it. If you don't, that's fine too. Just make sure you come back next time where we answer some more of those W questions, or maybe we'll actually start taking this car apart. Who knows? The world is our oyster and anything could happen.